Lincoln has been tormented by his lover recently. His lover is pregnant and insists on forcing Lincoln to get a divorce. Men, when they go out for fun, usually don't take things too seriously, especially considering Lincoln's public position. He cannot risk ruining his future for a fling. If Lincoln's wife finds out about his affair, she might as well take a 3-foot-long knife and chop him into pieces. Despite Lincoln's current prosperity, it relies on the influential father-in-law, so he dare not act recklessly in front of his wife. In a moment of carelessness, he got himself into such a big mess, and to make matters worse, his lover is quite troublesome. This situation has deeply troubled Lincoln. His lover, in a fit of desperation, cries and threatens on the phone, infuriating Lincoln to the point that he throws his phone, shattering the screen instantly. His impulsive act happens to be witnessed by his old classmate Chase. Chase stands at the doorway, unsure whether to come in or leave. Lincoln, still in a fit of rage, doesn't acknowledge him. Chase picks up the shattered phone, pats Lincoln on the shoulder, and asks with concern, "Old classmate, what happened to make you so furious? Despite our youth, getting angry like this is not good for your health." Lincoln looks embarrassed, but with his mood so heavy, he is actually looking for someone to talk to. So when Chase invites him for a drink to chat, Lincoln agrees. Chase sought out Lincoln not just for a friendly chat, he has a favor to ask. His son's grades are a bit lacking, and he wants to get him into a prestigious high school in the city, which requires a payment of 100,000 yuan. Moreover, money alone won't cut it, connections are needed. Hearing that Lincoln has some connections in this regard, Chase has come to try his luck. The two men chatted while drinking, and Chase seized the opportunity to share his own concerns. Lincoln instinctively wanted to refuse, as his own affairs were not yet settled. However, at the moment when he saw the hopeful expression on Chase's face, a thought suddenly popped into his mind. Since Chase is seeking his help, could he negotiate a deal with him? If Chase could help him resolve the situation with his lover, it would be a win-win situation for both of them. The reason Lincoln dared to choose Chase for this task is not only because Chase asked for his help. For such private matters, he couldn't approach someone too familiar, but he also needed someone he could trust. Chase, with his relatively reliable background, was the right choice. Lincoln and Chase used to live in the same compound and were in the same class in primary school, so they had a certain level of understanding. Firstly, Chase is an ordinary working man, and Lincoln won't need to seek his help in the future. The Chase he knows seems dependable. Moreover, helping Chase solve his child's problem would save him a considerable amount of money, and for a family like Chase's, 100,000 yuan is not a small sum. Lincoln should be grateful for this. With this new perspective, Lincoln felt a glimmer of hope. He finished his drink, deliberately slowed down, and took a sip of water before replying to Chase, "Your matter may be manageable or not, depending on how we go about it." Chase, excited, asked, "What should we do?" Lincoln felt a bit awkward. He cleared his throat and, fueled by alcohol, narrated the story of how the woman had seduced and entangled him. When men talk about such matters, women become the most contemptible creatures in their mouths. If they don't take the initiative, how could men go astray? Chase was stunned, as if he had just bitten into a bitter melon. He forgot to drink his wine, and his chopsticks fell to the floor. Nevertheless, he echoed Lincoln, "Yes, yes, some women are just shameless, thinking too highly of us men." Lincoln thought Chase seemed reliable, so he shared his plan. If Chase could help him resolve this trouble, then the matter of his child's schooling would be no problem at all. After a brief consideration, Chase readily agreed, patting his chest and saying, "In my hands, this is nothing." Lincoln was secretly delighted, he hadn't misjudged Chase. With each man harboring his own thoughts and expectations, they joyfully clinked glasses, sealing the deal. Lincoln initially believed he would quickly receive news from Chase. However, a week passed, and Chase vanished like air, not even sending a single text. Strangely, his lover, who used to call him 800 times a day, also stopped reaching out. The world suddenly became quiet, creating an unsettling atmosphere. Could it be that Chase had taken drastic measures against Lincoln's lover? He couldn't call Chase, fearing it might implicate him if something had indeed happened. Lincoln also dared not contact his lover to avoid leaving more evidence. He even searched online for recent criminal cases, looking for incidents like suicide or accidents in the past few days. It was evident he was a rather timid man, unable to even control his own belt. Men could be so despicable. During those days, Lincoln lived in constant anxiety, regretting his decision the day after drinking with Chase. How could he allow an outsider to have leverage over him? Who knew what trouble this might bring in the future? It was truly foolish. In the midst of this anxious waiting for 10 days, Chase finally called Lincoln. At the time, Lincoln was in a meeting, and his immediate reaction was a firm determination not to let Chase appear in his office. He sent a message, asking Chase to wait for him at the coffee shop on the first floor of the hotel across the street. Like a secret agent meeting, Lincoln clandestinely met with Chase. Before speaking, he carefully observed Chase several times, unable to discern any clues from his face. His uncertainty deepened. "Old classmate, the matter is resolved," Chase said casually, leaning back on the sofa, looking calm, nothing like a fugitive on the run. That should mean nothing bad had happened. Lincoln, with a variety of inner turmoil, remained composed on the surface and asked, "There won't be any repercussions, will there?" "What repercussions could there be? People are unwilling to deal with you now, even if you try to find them," Chase said confidently, swiftly changing the subject. "You need to pay attention to the other matter of mine. Time is running out." Lincoln relaxed slightly, curious about the tactics Chase had used to persuade such a difficult woman. However, not wanting to make Chase appear too triumphant, he tightened his lips and refrained from asking. As a precaution, Lincoln secretly visited his lover's home. As soon as she saw him, she directly shut him out, scolding him through the door, "You better get lost and bother me less in the future." A heavy burden lifted from Lincoln's heart. Chase's words were true, she no longer wanted anything to do with him. While inwardly relieved, he genuinely admired Chase's methods. Without lingering for a second at his lover's door, he practically hummed a tune, swiftly making his escape, afraid that if he delayed even a second, the woman might start bothering him again. Everything was resolved perfectly, and in his car, he began making calls to arrange Chase's affairs. After a few days, Chase sent Lincoln 2 bottles of fine wine, expressing gratitude for Lincoln's help with his son. Lincoln, discerning the value of the wine, which was around 2,000 yuan, mentioned how Chase still owed him thanks. While leaving the 2 bottles of wine, Lincoln had already removed Chase from the category of friends. Who would want someone who knew their secrets constantly hovering around? Chase, however, felt that after this incident, he and Lincoln should have a closer relationship. He called Lincoln several times, genuinely wanting to strengthen their bond. Lincoln's attitude became increasingly indifferent and distant. Chase, feeling the shift, gradually cooled off. In Lincoln's world, some roads are better left blocked. He and Chase were just occasional intersections. After crossing, each went their separate ways. Lincoln suddenly felt that life had become beautiful. No rotten peach blossoms, no one knowing his secrets bothering him. Good luck was finally on its way. Within 2 years, he got a promotion. He felt fortunate for removing that malignant tumor in advance, otherwise, it might have held him back for a lifetime. Learning from that lesson, Lincoln dared not mess around anymore. He remained virtuous as a blank sheet of paper, loving his wife and family. His career soared, making him a man as rare as exotic animals. Lincoln had contact with Chase again, 7 years later. By this time, Lincoln had moved from the district to the city, broadening his horizons. One day, as he just arrived at the office and before he could even settle into his chair, someone walked in behind him. Initially ready to express his displeasure, Lincoln was taken aback when the person smiled and said, "Old classmate, long time no see." Recognizing Chase, Lincoln's heart inexplicably fluttered. How did he come here? The almost forgotten past suddenly surged back like a raging beast. Overwhelmed by the force, he momentarily couldn't resist. Trying to control his disarrayed emotions, Lincoln politely shook hands and greeted Chase. "Yeah, it's been many years." After some polite exchanges, before even finishing a cup of tea, Chase brought up his request. His son had graduated from college and wanted to join an organization in the city. However, the competition was fierce, and without connections, he hoped Lincoln could help maneuver the situation. If someone wants to use someone else, their intentions are written all over their face. In these years, while Lincoln hadn't paid much attention to Chase, Chase had been keenly observing Lincoln's every move, especially his career advancements. "Old classmate, you're getting more capable now. Even your phone number has changed, and I can't find you to reconnect," Chase flattered, wearing a smile that hinted at flattery. "With your current abilities, what I'm asking for is just a piece of cake." Chase was attempting to accomplish such a significant favor with a few smooth words. Lincoln inwardly sneered. He wasn't part of the royal family, and he couldn't manipulate fate. He would never joke about his own future, especially given the nature of their relationship. Lincoln quickly came up with a set of corresponding excuses. "It's not easy to do anything now. There are many eyes watching. I really can't help you with your matter." Chase probably didn't expect him to refuse so decisively and was momentarily stunned. He awkwardly smiled. "How is that possible? You must have connections." Chase was particularly skilled in this tactic, always shifting the conversation at critical moments. "By the way, did Gianna contact you again?" Gianna was the lover Chase helped Lincoln handle. At the mention of the name, Lincoln couldn't help but shudder. Lacking experience, he was inadvertently caught by Chase. Lincoln also noticed that Chase had made no progress in these years, and there was no reason to fear him. He leaned back in his chair, hands open. "Who are you talking about?" "I don't know anyone named Gianna." A sly smile appeared on Chase's face. "Gianna, you forget things when you have many important connections." Uneasy, Lincoln's phone conveniently rang, rescuing him from the suffocating conversation. He dodged Chase and went into the inner room, closing the door behind him. When he emerged again, Chase was gone. With the conversation at that level, even a fool could understand. After that day, Chase didn't bother Lincoln anymore, disappearing just like a few years ago. Behind this disappearance, it was unclear what significant changes might be at play. Lincoln once again fell into a state of fearful anxiety. It turned out that deep down, his cowardice had never changed. One day, Lincoln's wife told him that one of his classmates had come to the office to see her, leaving without mentioning anything specific. Lincoln's heart sank. Could it be Chase? He instructed his wife not to entertain people like that in the future, emphasizing that he had no close relationships with classmates who might need his help. Certainly, someone was trying to approach him, using the guise of being a classmate. Avoiding his wife's gaze filled with suspicion, Lincoln felt a sense of guilt. Lincoln didn't sleep well that night, tormented by thoughts of whether Chase had left any evidence. It had been 7 years, what could still exist, and even if there was, Chase wouldn't admit it. Various thoughts tortured him, and the pitch-dark night seemed unusually long. Just before dawn, he made a decision. He would go see Chase and test what cards he held. Early the next morning, Lincoln called Chase. Chase was quite surprised. "Hey, boss, what made you think of calling me?" "Good news," Lincoln said. There was a job opening in a unit, and he could inquire about it for Chase as long as his child had excellent grades. Chase immediately became excited. Carrying 2 bottles of wine, Lincoln went to the appointment, seemingly the same bottles Chase had given him years ago. Intent on getting Chase drunk, Lincoln quickly succeeded. The two of them leaned on each other, calling each other brothers as if they wanted to share the same pants. Lincoln asked him, "Hey, how did you handle Gianna back then?" Chase raised a mysterious smile, exhaling alcohol, teasing, "Let me tell you, it's a secret." To hell with the secret. In the end, under Lincoln's probing, Chase spilled the truth. He investigated and found out that Gianna wasn't pregnant at all, she just wanted to extort some money. Chase had his wife pose as Lincoln's wife and threatened to expose her actions in her hometown. Part threat, part intimidation, part persuasion, Chase dug into his own pocket and gave Gianna $20,000, scaring the woman away. Compared to the $100,000 for tuition, he actually made a profit of $80,000. He wasn't at a loss. Chase shook his head and laughed, behaving like a fool. And the even more foolish Lincoln stared blankly at Chase. Turns out, a simple lie, a fake wife, and the problem was easily solved. Why didn't he think of it back then? In fact, he had considered giving money, but he was afraid the lover would keep demanding. In essence, he just wanted to freeload. Subsequently, he felt a kind of anger and humiliation at being fooled. What kind of magic trick did he think Chase had? He really wanted to beat up the drunken man in front of him. Jumping up from his chair, he glared at Chase with burning rage. If ice could shoot fire, he wished to turn him into ashes. Chase stared dazedly, falling asleep on the table. That was it. He would never contact Chase again, dreaming if he thought Chase could help him. Childishly, Lincoln slapped Chase's head and quickly ran away. Let that jerk wake up on his own. Lincoln blocked Chase's phone number, and Chase never came to find him. Later, he heard that Chase's son didn't take the civil service exam but continued to pursue a master's degree. Would Chase come to bother him after finishing his master's? But he wasn't worried because he had no handle for Chase to grab onto. An expired lover, what did it matter? Even if someone brought up old matters, it would be Chase's wife stepping forward to handle the mess. Others would think it was Chase's lover. He had to thank Chase for his sacrificial spirit, allowing him to peacefully live the rest of his life. Thinking of this, a content and somewhat dirty smile appeared on Lincoln's face.